We are kicking off our May monthly potluck, and so we are excited to have everyone with us. We'll give it just another second and we will jump right in. Oh my goodness. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'd like to say in person, but we'll get back to that soon enough. And I appreciate everyone that'll end up watching the replay as well that has specifically RSVP'd just for the replay. We'll get that sent out a few days after the event goes live. Let me make sure we are recording and we are live streaming. Things for some housekeeping there before we get started. If you want or need some closed captioning and don't see it, you can click on the CC icon or on the More button or the three dots, depending on what you see in your Zoom controls. Then you can either click on Show Subtitles, or if you're on a mobile device, it may say View Full Transcript. And so we want to make sure that we can hear Kathy clearly for those that are needing the recording. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, either on Facebook or in the Zoom room. We recommend you put a question mark or two in front of your question so we know that it's something we need to ask Kathy, and we'll be sure to ask them when we can, and she can see them, so she'll answer when she can too. And if we need to, we may be able to have you unmute yourself at that time. But we appreciate all of our pod members that join us each month for our virtual potluck. And our special shout out goes to Sarita Cruz from Christabel Spa and Wellness, and to, of course, Kathy Hester for sharing today's event with your community as well. We love having all of the new faces and names join us today. And since we do have lots of new faces, just in case we've not met before, we are the Fiorentino sisters. My name is Elizabeth Fiorentino Williams, and I am the founder of Naturally Complete of NC. I've been helping people make small shifts with their food and lifestyle that create big impacts on theirs and their family's health for over 23 years now. My sister Deanna Fiorentino Smith, who's with us as well, is the founder of Triangle of Light Healing Center. She's been assisting people help their light shine brighter by offering illuminations and natural health solutions for a sustainable life. Together, we are the Fiorentino sisters and the co-leaders of the Chapel Hill Plant Pure Pod. But I know everyone is excited for tonight's demo. And so in case there's a few of you out there that happen to not know who Kathy Hester is, let me give you a brief introduction before I turn it over to her. So let me just make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat as we go through. All right, so yes, Kathy Hester lives in Durham, North Carolina. We are so lucky that she is that close to our Chapel Hill pod. She proclaims that she lives with her very own picky eater, who we love as well, a kitchen garden, 2 dogs and a cat, and lots of kitchen appliances. She writes the blog healthyslowcooking.com, which is full of easy vegan recipes. And when she's not blogging, taking food photos, or developing new recipes, she's teaching classes, writing articles about eating healthier, menu planning, and cooking for picky eaters. All her recipes are vegan, and most even offer a soy-free, gluten-free, and no oil added options, which is great for our Plant Pure group. In addition to running the blog Healthy Slow Cooking, she also runs plant-based-instantpot.com, has several Facebook groups, and has published 10 vegan cookbooks. And so she has worked with brands such as Idaho Potatoes, Cutco, Sabra, Frigidaire, Arrow Garden, and more. And her recipes have been featured in the Washington Post, Bob's Red Mill, the Oregonian, just to name a few. Kathy Hester is known for her vegan slow cooker and Instant Pot books, though she has made some mad skills out of working with beans and oatmeal, which we'll see some of that today. She offers a great variety of online classes and presents at various events like the Boston Veg Fest, our very own Triangle Veg Fest, at libraries, bookstores, and now for you all today. She loves thinking outside of the box, believes that no matter what your dietary limitations are, that you deserve to eat amazing food too. So let's give a warm welcome to our friend and pod member, Kathy Hester.
Thanks, you guys, so much for showing up to hang out with me today. And thanks for hanging out with me in my kitchen. It makes cleanup easier for sure, but hopefully soon we'll be in a room together as well. I'm looking forward to the time where we can all travel freely again. Um, one of the things I wanted to talk about today is a couple of ways to make things easier, because I get my little obsessions. And those of you in the pod know, because I asked Elizabeth, I'm like, do you want me to just do whatever I'm obsessed about at the moment, or do you want something in particular? Because I'm always obsessed with something. And so I feel like right now, because of some of the shortages, food costs go way up, especially like even if you got salt-free vegetable bouillon. And so it's really easy to make it yourself. And it also ensures it doesn't have any of the weird things that you can't pronounce or you don't know what they are. So we're going to make, originally I called it not from a box mac and cheese powder. So basically we're making a nutritional yeast oat powder. And what's kind of cool about that, so this is one of the things that we're going to be making, okay? And it's going to last for a year or longer. And it's really until the oats go off. So you could always keep it in a cooler spot. I don't keep it in the fridge. And we're going to make the powder and we're going to make the sauce. So you're going to see the whole process. But the reason I'm kind of liking these dry mixes is they're whole food plant-based, they're no oil. You can do it salt-free if you're on a SOFAS or a salt-free diet. And now some of the things that we're going to do, because we're doing 2 cheesy sauces, will have nutritional yeast in it. If you have a nutritional yeast sensitivity, put it in the comments and I will see what I can do to talk to you about it. It's not going to be cheesy, but I can give you some alternatives to make it a delicious sauce. We're going to make this other powder, which I call creamy sauce mix. So intellectual, but basically, like if you wanted to make an Alfredo sauce, maybe you don't have cauliflower right now, right? So these are also for allowing you to build on your staple meal prep. So if you've got some potatoes, some steamed or roasted vegetables, maybe some grains, you can use these to put over bowls. So it's a healthy sauce addition. And I found in the past 3 years with COVID that, and some other things that are going on with me personally, I don't always have a lot of energy all the time, right? And maybe you guys do. And if you do, tell me your secret because I want to know. But you know, actually my thyroid has been low and I've not been sleeping so well. So sometimes I'm just like, what's in the fridge? Or I don't want to get out cauliflower and steam it and do all these other things. These sauces, I take a 1/4 cup, I toast it, I add some water. You could add your favorite unsweetened non-dairy milk of choice, whisk it together, you have a beautiful sauce. So we're talking minutes here and not a lot of thinking. So if you're tired, you can still do it. Also, this comes from my homemade dry mix class 1, of which there will be many. There is a second one already. And I do a dry veggie bouillon, a dry beefy bouillon. I know there's something else, a golden gravy, which is kind of like a vegan chickeny gravy, and a white gravy, all that are mixes. Most of them have a base of rolled oats. So they're gluten-free, soy-free, oil-free, and lots of other frees that you can do as well. And we're going to see how these work. I've actually spiralized a giant juicer carrot. Like our carrots that we're going to be getting now are going to be thin and delicate and beautiful to cut up. Don't try to spiralize them because you're going to get like those little half circles, which could make a nice mac and cheese, really. So don't worry about that either. But I had one that was like this big. So I popped it on and spiralized it all up. And that's what I'm going to put my creamy sauce on. You could put creamy sauce on whole wheat pasta, lentil pasta, zucchini noodles, other spiralized things, because we're all on different levels of what we think is okay and not okay. So if I don't give you an option that works for you, pop it in the comments and I will definitely talk to you. So I'm trying to think of where I was going with these. So I have been just kind of having a little bit of lower energy, wanting to have some things that are easy to make. Also, if you're new to plant-based eating, which I think most of you are not, but there probably are a couple of you that are kind of like, yeah, that baked potato and that steamed broccoli, you know, I'm team potato, but can we put something else on there? Well, this is something that's compliant, that's tasty, that you can put on there, right? So we've got all that. And then I'm going to make my favorite fondue recipe. And even before I became vegan and I did fondue stuff, I actually used a can of beans to hold the cheese together. I told you, I was like, well, I want to make fondue and I don't have any almonds soaked. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just show you an overview. These are the slivered almonds because those are the ones that don't have skins on them right now. Right? So I'm just going to actually heat it up a little bit on this induction burner, kind of let it come to a boil a little bit, and that will soften it up good enough. Part of it isn't this, it's just that there's that stuff in there. So I put about 1 cup of water in with this. I'm going to let it come up to a boil and I'm going to let it sit while we do a couple of the other things, right? Okay, cool. And the other things, and I think Elizabeth put up the information for this recipe, but I will read it out to you just so you can kind of get ahead of the game. And this is not the one I'm trying to read. I totally didn't print that one out. What did I put? Blender. Oh, there we go. I did print it out. I renamed it. Now it's something new. So it's going to have 1.5 cups cooked white beans. And so I'm just going to be using a can. And we're actually can use some of the aquafaba from that can, or you could use homemade beans. We've got about 1 cup of blanched almonds. If you have whole raw almonds and you soak them overnight, you can slip the skins off as well. So if you don't want to go buy, I usually get Trader Joe's slivered almonds, which are thicker than these, but these are what I had today. We're going to do some nutritional yeast, some miso, some lactic acid, and we're going to talk about that for a minute. Vegan lactic acid, granulated garlic, onion powder, and dry mustard powder. So it's very simple. And this is the complicated recipe, right? So if having more than 1 or 2 ingredients makes you nervous, try to take a deep Zen breath with me, because basically we have 2 main elements. We've got the nuts, we've got the beans, and then we have flavoring. So if you get used to having like maybe making Thai recipes, Asian recipes, Indian recipes, the ingredient list can be quite long. And so see this, I've just brought it to a boil and I'm just going to cut it off and set it to the side. And we're just going to let that soak while we make our powders. And we'll first talk a little bit about this lactic acid. And let's see which place is probably, I think this is this camera. Yeah. So you might be able to see it a little bit better from this angle. Okay. And over here, what you'll see is it's organic, non-GMO, gluten-free, and vegan. Because when we hear lactic, we think, well, usually that denotes some sort of milk thing, but it's not. This is from non-GMO beets. And I don't think you can see in there. And basically, it's just a white powder. And it's a white powder that's not going to let it taste like cheese. And you're like, what? No, the nutritional yeast is going to make it taste like cheese. However, this is going to give it a sharpness that's going to make it taste more like a cheddar or something that's been aged a little bit longer. So if I just put this in and didn't put the nutritional yeast in, you're still not going to get the cheesy flavor. This gives the sharpness. If you put it on your mouth, it's just a little sour. It's kind of like citric acid. If you had citric acid today, you could use a little citric acid. that's usually in powder form. When we're doing the powders, we don't want to put any liquids in there. If you had a powdered vinegar, that would also lend to give it a sharpness. If you wanted to use something like vinegar, then you can make the powder, and just when you reconstitute the sauce, add a splash of vinegar. So I found out about this in Julie Hassan's cheese recipe, which comes from Summer's cheese recipe, which I made an oat recipe from that we're not even doing today. So it's kind of like the vegan recipe that's passed around and changed and improved on all the time. But I do find that it helps give a more complex flavor. And I've had this bottle for like 4 years. So I think it's about $20, but like, let's see, I think one recipe we use a teaspoon in each of these. So that means this is probably 6 to 8, versions of the sauce, like a 2-cup-ish sauce. So it goes a long way. Do you absolutely have to have it? No. Where can you get it? You can get it on Amazon. And someone said, what brand? Absolutely. It's Druid's Grove. And I'll see, I don't know if they make all these so teeny. It's a Druid's Grove. And now I think it comes into a packet instead of this. It tells you how old it is, right? Yeah. Deanna has it. She's holding it up right there. So that's the new cool looking package.
So
I got super nervous because I had just put out all these dry recipe mixes, and then it disappeared from Amazon for a hot minute. So, but I think it was just a supply chain issue.
So in your, thank you, Deanna, for showing that. But since you're muted, you don't get speaker view to see that. So, but I did want to comment that, Kathy, I added to the recipes that you gave us. So everybody that got the recipes have a link to where you can find that on Amazon and the specific brand and information that Kathy recommends for that lactic acid.
Oh, that's awesome. And you know what I just realized too is I didn't bring the measuring cup over that I wanted. This is I love being in my kitchen, you guys. All kinds of nonsense can ensue and it doesn't matter. I just remember, actually, Elizabeth, the first class I met you where we had to bring everything in, get everything set up, wash everything there. Like it was hours process. Okay, so we're gonna make.
But we loved it, and we want you back for another in person. But my kitchen is getting more and more retrofitted with all of the things and the multiples of stuff, and so you'll have less to need to bring this time. So we're excited for that when we get that.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, even if we go on vacation, like I bring my air fryer, my blender, and all these other things. Yeah. And someone said a lazy Susan with drawers. Actually, if you go to my YouTube channel, if you just look up, I don't know if I think it's on my YouTube. There's definitely a post on Healthy Slow Cooking about it. I worked with a company to get a couple of things done. And like in this over here, it has drawers that come out this way and then you pull them out, and then there's side drawers that come back. I forget what you call it, but it's magical for sure. So let's go ahead and do the creamy pasta sauce. And you're going to be kind of surprised. So in the creamy pasta sauce mix, which is this guy, we've got oats, nutritional yeast, lactic acid, some garlic, onion powder, black pepper. It's very simple. You could also make a gravy with it. You could use it to thicken a soup. You could do all kinds of things. We're going to end up making a rosemary cream sauce with it, and then putting it on our carrot noodles. So first off, you just need a blender, and these are some rolled oats. I usually get mine in big packets. That's my cat saying hello. Actually, what she's saying is, leave my mom alone so she'll feed me. And so hopefully Cheryl will feed her. So we're going to put 1 cup, and I got a 1/4 cup measure because it fits into the top of this. And you know what? What if you had 7/8 of a cup of oats? Oh no, it'll be fine. Don't worry. Recipes, yeah, you want them to be sort of precise, but you know what happens is people like me who make recipes have to write down amounts. So the first time, maybe it was 7/8. Then when I went back to do it, I can't tell you to measure out 7/8 of a cup of oats because you're going to yell at me, right? So just let things just kind of flow and do it to taste. If you're like, that lady's crazy, why does she eat that much nutritional yeast? That's disgusting. Have it. And actually, not only that, you could just double all the other ingredients and put it right into the blender right now and taste it. Okay, so we're going to put a cup of nutritional yeast. And I love my nutritional yeast container. They don't make them anymore because I was looking. And I really like, even though this isn't a cheese sauce and it doesn't end up tasting cheesy, this adds a savoriness that's really important to me. And if you can't have nutritional yeast, what I would do is I would double the oats, and then I probably would add some other umami ingredients. So tomato powder, mushroom powder, things like that, right? So we'd still end up with these wonderful savory tastes, or maybe if you have some vegetable bouillon. I made a vegetable bouillon in my dehydrator class 2 weeks ago. And what I did is I cut up and dehydrated celery, carrots, mushrooms, garlic, onion, and I think something else. And I just ground it all up with my handy dandy spice grinder. So it smells like magic. And I don't know why I'm so proud of myself, because it has nothing to do with me, right? I just dehydrated nature's goodness and ground it up. But something like this in there would be good too. All right, we're going to do, and you're going to notice we're probably going to use a lot of garlic powder and onion powder. It really brings a nice flavor to things. We are making stuff from multiple versions of a sauce, and that's another reason. I usually buy my garlic. We're going to do 2 teaspoons, and I know you guys have the recipes, and there's also a link in the chat if you haven't already, and 2 teaspoons of onion powder. And I can't remember if I was doing this last time we had the pod, but I have Kathy's plain salt substitute blend, because usually you could you get like whatever Mrs. Dash, and it's got all these different things, and so it can change the flavor of what you're doing, right? So and if I had a salt-free Mexican spice blend, I don't want to put that in my hummus unless I want to make it Mexican flavored, right? So you can get a plain salt substitute. Cheapest way you can do it: 1 tablespoon of ground onion powder, 1 tablespoon ground garlic powder, 1 teaspoon ground celery seed. Mix that all together, put it in a little salt cellar, and use it to taste like you would salt. And that's also why in these mixes we're going to do that too. It still adds some of those really yummy things. I don't put salts in my mixes because I'd prefer to salt it to whatever I'm making, right? Because that way I can use as much of the flavor and different things like that as well. And then we're going to do 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper.
And so we just to touch on some of the comments in the group or in the chat, the recipes are in there. I'll post them again. We are on the cheesy pasta sauce mix, if I'm not mistaken.
Creamy.
I'm sorry, creamy. Yes, creamy pasta sauce mix. And there was a comment that someone wants to know what your induction burner is. It looks very professional.
It's so professional. Cheryl got it for me at JCPenney's like 20 years ago. I'm not even kidding you. And sometimes it makes a funny noise now, but it's a Cook's brand.
Cook's brand.
Yeah, it looks fancy, but and people are always saying, what induction burner should I get? Because I think I'm going to need to get another one, but I'm holding out. But this one's worked great. I mean, I've used it for a bazillion years.
Somebody else asked about recordings. Yes, if you officially registered for the event and I have your email address, then you will be getting a replay recording of this as well as the recipes as well if you didn't get those. If I don't have your email address because you somehow found this link without registering miraculously, then you can put it in the chat, private message me in the chat, and I will make sure that you get on our list. And Tiffany says, Kathy has the coolest shirts. I want to go shopping with her for a short wardrobe. You do have the coolest shirts, Kathy. Oh, she's blending right now, so she is on mute. And so I appreciate everyone that is with us. I'll ask what type of spice grinder does she use for when she's not blending?
Okay, yeah, I muted myself and blend. I'm like, this is the perfect time to blend. You guys don't need to hear all that. But you could see from the side kind of how it just blends. So the blender I'm using right now is a Ninja blender. You can use a Vitamix, a Blendtec, a fancy blender. In fact, you can use a non-fancy blender. This Ninja is Smart Torque with the smoothie bowl blender, which kind of turns kind of like the Blendtec blades. And that it varies between $79 and $99. So I always try to have a blender that's not $400 in my arsenal. Like, do I love my Vitamix and Blendtec? Of course I do, right? I'm not a serial killer. You know, however, I remember when I was first starting to do some of this stuff, and it made me very angry that someone felt like I should pay a couple of car payments at that time to have a blender. So if you can't get the fanciest blender, you know, it just may not be as finely ground. Another thing I have for my Ninja is that, and you can get it from Ninja now and some other places, you can't always find it on Amazon. This is a spice grinder attachment to the Ninja. And if you have a spice grinder or coffee grinder, it's perfect for stuff like this, especially if maybe you don't drink coffee anymore. You can just run some white rice through it. It'll start absorbing those coffee flavors. Depending on how many decades you've used it, it might take a while, right? But you can also go to like a thrift store. Let's say maybe your significant other still drinks a lot of coffee, or you can go on Amazon. And I have, I think for $39, I got a little spice grinder that has 2 different containers. And I can do that because I've been dehydrating a lot of things. Like I dehydrate tomatoes and make tomato powder, jalapenos, make jalapeno powder, and things like that. So it can come in handy. And mushroom powder, if you heard me say that, you might be like, that lady's crazy. Mushroom powder is expensive. Well, you know how mushroom powder is not expensive? And you guys all live in the area. I go to Lee Ming's, which is in Durham, but that's an Asian market. I get my shiitakes and my mushrooms there. And sometimes their shiitakes are like this big and the stems are this long and they're tough. I cut all those stems off, put them to the side. I slice them, put them in the dehydrator, and then I'll keep putting it in an airtight container like that, dehydrated stems. And when I run out of mushroom powder, I grind them up and it's free, right? Because I would have just thrown it into the compost or the garden. Same thing, I started doing tomato powder because I'm not a fan of cherry tomatoes. I love big, luscious, slicing tomatoes. And so I just cut them in half, put them in the dehydrator, and then actually I must have moved it over here. Yeah. And this is some I made the other day from like a little pint of tomatoes. And so if you look at it like that, I was also thinking, because it's funny you read about the kitchen garden. I haven't had a kitchen garden in like 7 years. And I just like totally did it up. And in fact, Elizabeth, I think I have to send you a picture of a tomato leaf so you can help me. It's one of the ones that I shouldn't have bought from Lowe's that was already big. So I'm pretty sure it's a nasty that I need to do something about. But as I'm looking through there, so I'm growing all the peppers, you guys, all the peppers, shishitos, pimentos, cayenne, poblano, like as many peppers as I can grow. Yeah, couleroos for Cheryl, which are jalapenos without spice, so I can have a jalapeno powder for her that she can eat. And the brilliantness of it is that when you only have 1 or 2 peppers, I can still dehydrate them, right? I can slice them, dehydrate them, keep them, and then finally make my powders later on. So, but this has been a lot of talking, but do you know how long this took? Like 3 minutes? Do you think 3 minutes? You think less, maybe? Less.
I'd say less. I'd say less. It's a little bit of mix, like getting it out of the spice containers, putting it into the blender, and then it was probably less than 45 seconds on blend.
Yeah, it really doesn't take that long. And this one, let me get a big pan. This is actually going to be our dinner. I got I got this pan. It has a ceramic inside, which I know is not as good as some of the more expensive pans you guys have, but it's really heavy and nice at Sam's Club. So once we have one of these powders, what the heck do we do? We're going to toast it a little bit because we didn't toast our oats. So usually I put in about a 1/4 cup, and you can just see what you think. And we're just going to toast it a little bit. I might put just a little bit extra because that's a good amount of carrots over there. And I'll tell you how I got to those carrots too. So I'm just going to take, let's see,
so while you're switching cameras, one of the questions that we're getting is, do you recommend a particular dehydrator, or what are your thoughts on the Breville dehydrator function?
That's what I've been using. I pulled it back out. If you have the Breville and you probably got it for the toaster oven, part of it dehydrates great. I did get 2 extra of the baskets, and you can put all 4 in for dehydration setting only. One thing I do find of it, which will make you a little disconcerted at first, is that condensation, or it's going to look like smoke is coming out here and here. And it's not smoke, it's actually condensation. So like my carrots did that because the liquid in the carrots were kind of, doing their thing. And it's a little spooky at first. It is. And so we're just toasting this. And if you want, it's a good idea to smell it in the beginning, then smell it a little later, and you'll smell these flavors being developed.
And I have the Excalibur dehydrator, which I love. You can get 7 trays or 9 trays, or with a timer, without a timer. But I'm sure Kathy recommends that as well. Any dehydrator you get is better than no dehydrator if that's something you're looking to do. I know folks that use their oven on the lowest temperature with the door cracked open, but you have to check it more often. And so there's some workarounds for that if you don't have a fancy dehydrator or Breville yet. But they're nice to have on hand.
Yeah. Cheryl's yelling out my normal tip that you guys can't hear, which is go to your thrift store because there's going to be a Nesco or something like that for $5. That was my first dehydrator. Somebody gave me a Nesco, and I still use it. And I agree with you. The Excalibur seems wonderful. I'm just still trying to decide, am I going to do more than 6 trays or 7 trays since I have the Nesco and this? But you might be able to talk me into it. I did add a little salt. That's what you guys saw me do. And I'm going to put about 2 cups of unsweetened milk. We'll see how much. However much was in there, is somewhere between 1.5 cups and 2 cups. You do want to use unsweetened in a pinch. If you're like, I have nothing, why are you making me get things out of my fridge? Make a quick oat milk. Put about 1/2 cup of oats with 3 cups of water in your blender with 1/2 teaspoon of chia seeds. Sometimes actually I will blend the water and the chia seeds up for a minute or 2. And then you're going to do your oats for about 30 to 45 seconds in cold water. The low blending time is going to help it not be slimy, as will the chia seeds will help it hold together and give you a better mouthfeel without any oil. And I dehydrated strawberries too, and I made strawberry quick oat milk. Yes, I did. And with some date syrup. And I used those chia seeds and it didn't separate at all. So that's everybody's biggest complaint. And then you don't even have to use chia seeds for this. I would just throw it in, do it, and put it right on in, because that's easy peasy. So just like a gravy or anything else, we're just looking at it to get about right. I can add some water. I'm going to add some fresh rosemary. You could add powdered rosemary. You could add any kind of flavor profile you want. I usually use, if I'm using powder, I use ground, because I don't like the way the dry needles poke me. And I'm going to turn this down a little bit. And this is probably a good thickness. You could put some black pepper in there. We could do whatever we want. To me, this makes a nice creamy sauce. It doesn't taste as cheesy as you think. And I always say, if for some reason it's a little lumpier than you'd like, we could put this in the blender. Most people feel like it thins out pretty quick, because remember, the oats are thickening this sauce and making a roux on its own. And now I'm gonna just put these carrots I spiralized, and then I probably roasted for about, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes, just to soften them up. And yeah, a couple of them are a little crispy. I'm throwing them in anyhow. Okay, and that's one tray. And if this gets too thick while I'm doing it, I'll just add some more water or milk and thin it back out, and it'll all be fine. And so these carrots, I actually spiralized last week. So I didn't spiralize them today. So again, if I would have not made this for you, I could have just made the creamy sauce. And this would have been a really pretty quick hands-off meal. See, that's a little thicker than I'd like it. So I'm just going to add in a little bit of water. If I add too much water, I'll just cook it a little bit more. The oats are really good at just kind of pulling everything back together. And oh, you know what we should add? I know what we should add. I'm going to turn this down. I'm going to add just a little more water. I think I've got some Swiss chard in the fridge that's all sliced up. The question is, where is it hiding? Ha. Okay, so I did this last night. I got a big, beautiful bunch of Swiss chard. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this and went ahead and washed it and prepped it and cut it up was so that I could go, oh, look, I could add some greens here, there, elsewhere. Oh, my fridge does not like to be rearranged. It's like, don't rearrange me. And so I'm just going to saute until these wilt a little bit. And if I need to add some more water, I really turn down the heat quite a lot, because I find that when you cut them thin like this, it doesn't take much to get them to wilt. And I also I think I'm going to need tongs, like a grown sort of person. Oh, I got baby tongs. I'll use my baby tongs. Aren't they cute? They're teeny. Just so I can get that mixed up in the clumps of carrots.
If we have a question from someone that made the cheese using the oats. If it has a very oat taste, what do you recommend to improve that? Does that make sense?
Which you made the DIY oat cheese?
I believe so.
I would, let's look at that. I would add some more nutritional yeast and some more tomatoes, maybe some more smoked paprika. I've never had that problem, but I also love oats. Like I tasted this right now just to see, I'm like, it doesn't taste oaty to me at all. Like I wouldn't know that there were any in it. Can you tell me a little more about that? Because I would like to help you, because I know just saying what I just said isn't super helpful. But see, this is going to be my dinner. So a couple things, and I'm just going to let it sit because these will be nice and wilted by the time this class is over. And I could also serve this over a potato. I could serve this over rice, or this can just be the main pasta dish. And we could have done the same thing. If I had had cooked noodles, I could have added it to it and then added some more vegetables. So I would do that either way. So that's kind of this start to finish. And it has a nice rosemary taste. To me, if it has a real oaty taste, one, I'm concerned that perhaps you did not toast the oats enough before you made the sauce. Or if you're just like coming here, so the sauce I tasted there is going to be different than what I'm tasting here. So this still doesn't taste, I guess it tastes a little oaty, but not, it doesn't, to me, it tastes like what I remember growing up in the 70s, like my mom's packaged weird cream sauce is what it tastes like to me. But I'm tasting more of the.
They clarified it was a general oat cheese recipe, so it wasn't yours that we just did in class today.
Okay,
That changed.
so if you've made, the only one, like I do have a blender oat cheese where I don't think I toasted the oats. It's a blender queso that you can get over on Healthy Slow Cooking, which I love. But if anytime you feel like the oat flavor is too forward, definitely slowly toast the oats. If you're having an issue standing up that long and you know, and keep checking, you can also spread it on a sheet pan, probably at like 300, 320 degrees. That's how my friend Marilyn makes her roux. She's from New Orleans and she's SOS. So that's one way to do it. And I make an oat Parmesan, which sounds, it sounds stupid, impossible, like this cream sauce kind of sounds. And it's literally toasted oats that you slowly toast. And if you go to YouTube and look up Kathy Hester, you can literally see me and see the back of my head as I go, smells like oats now, smells a little different now. So what happens though is oats toast, they start smelling toasted, smoky, nut-like. So my oat Parmesan, you wouldn't know, it looks just like that old Kraft Parmesan in the shaker that many of you may remember growing up with. And it's just oats Parmesan, or oats, nutritional yeast and salt. See, I think nutritional yeast is magic too. Oats are magic. We're all magic too.
Yes, because if you don't have any of Kathy Hester's books, you can get some of them from our lending library here in our Chapel Hill pod. If you're local, you can check one of these out and bring it back. But she really does think oats are outrageous.
I do. And you can, I think you can still, there's still a few copies if you go through Virtual Veg Fest. I think I still have some copies over there. Okay, so that was the white, that was what? The creamy pasta mix. See, this is what I can correct you saying it, but I can't say it either. All right, so we're gonna do my oat cheese powder. And it pretty much is gonna work out very similar. This has more ingredients because I'm trying to mimic a cheddar cheese sauce. Okay, so this is what we want it to be, kind of like Kraft powder, only better and not so weird. And perhaps with a little bit of fiber and nutrition to it, which is why we're using oats. So we're going to put, again, about a cup of rolled oats in there. And have any of you guys ever made any powders or anything like this? And if you have some requests for these powders too, pass them on to Elizabeth, or you can email me at kathyhester@gmail.com. And then we're going to do 3/4 of a cup of nutritional yeast. And you might be going, lady, you put more in the creamy sauce. There's more stuff to come, I promise. And again, remember, you can always adjust. And I buy oats in like a 15-pound bag. There's gluten-free oats you can get on Amazon. And I buy nutritional yeast a pound at a time as well. I find that much less expensive. If you are new to plant-based eating, you can go to like Harris Teeter or something like that and get a little thing of nutritional yeast that's going to cost like $6. You can get a whole pound sometimes for $10. So, and it lasts for a really long time. So in the recipe, I say we can do 3 tablespoons of sun-dried tomatoes. We don't want them packed in oil. We want them like this, right? And these are literally the tomatoes I cut in half. If they are like, these are a little bit soft, I would dehydrate them a little extra before I tried to put them in the blender. Or you can use tomato powder, right? And so it's about the same thing. So we're using about 3 tablespoons, which is probably going to be most of this powder. And what the heck is this? This is from a vitamin, and it's one of those desiccant packs because we live in a very humid climate. This helps things not clump up quite as much. So actually, I'm just going to put about 2 1/4 in there. And if I need more, I'll put the rest of this in. We can put in a teaspoon of salt or a salt substitute. So remember that salt substitute was 1 tablespoon. And this is the whole, like, it's if we were filling this up, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon of onion powder mixed with 1 teaspoon of ground celery seed. I still put it all in the spice grinder to make it small. And if you can do less salt, you can do more salt. I believe in salt to taste, because if you've been cutting back on salt, right, that may be too much for you. So feel free to leave it out and then just add it later on. I usually make this for Cheryl. So this one I usually do put in and still adjust a little bit. Okay, so we're going to use some smoked paprika. If you hate smoked paprika, we have to talk. No, I'm just kidding. Use regular paprika. Although I love smoky foods, and I feel like this kind of gives this a good smoky cheese flavor. Another thing, sometimes you can get powdered smoke, or you could put a few drops of liquid smoke when you reconstitute this, not in the dry mix. We're going to do a teaspoon of mustard powder, just yellow mustard powder, or, oh, this one isn't going to, nope, it's not going to fit in there. Let me get a half one. You could use yellow mustard from the fridge, right? So if you don't have this, don't worry about it. This gives it that sharpness, American cheesy cheddarish stuff, and a little bit of a bite. So that's super helpful. All right. And I didn't put in my lactic acid. I don't think I put my lactic acid in the other one too. You guys knew you were going to be talking to a middle-aged lady, right? So what I could do for my for the rest of my stuff,
I just love that it means that when we do it at home, we're just like the professionals out there. So,
absolutely, absolutely. I had someone one day was like, some of your stuff doesn't turn out, and I just laughed as hard as I could laugh, because I'm like, I make mistakes so you don't have to. I tried crazy stuff that shouldn't work, and sometimes it does, like that oat Parmesan. I'm like, this isn't going to work. It's going to taste like nothing, but it worked. And what I can do is just come back in here, blend it, and then when I put it with the rest of my mix, it's fine. Most of the time. There are sometimes this is not the case, but most of the time things can be fixed. And you know what? Maybe you didn't have lactic acid. Tasted delicious. I liked it. I'm ready to have it for dinner. So that's another thing, because sometimes people don't believe me when I'm like, if you don't have it, it's going to be okay. They feel like somehow it's lesser than. So, okay.
And before you get blending, we had another question on what do you recommend as the best way to store spices like tomato powder, lactic acid, etc.? Is it okay to leave them in the envelope bags that they come in? Should they put it in glass or plastic? And then where in your kitchen do you store them?
Those are all really great questions. I usually leave most things in the packages they came in. Now, if my zipper bag, like if Deanna's zipper bag of lactic acid doesn't want to zipper back together, I have lots of zipper bags in Ziplocs. Mostly because also if you looked, I don't have it where you can see it now. If you look, this is my flour drawer with chia seeds, and there's like a flour mountain in there that actually needs to be vacuumed out from where I had something in a Ziploc that still didn't Ziploc. So some things I do end up putting in glass jars, mostly because it makes it fit well. My main spices are in here. Up there are secondary spices, and in the pantry I have bins of backup spices. So that's why my answer is complicated. If something like this is not Sprouts onion powder anymore, I just buy a pound, or, so a lot of times with most, like certain things like basil, thyme, green leafed herbs are going to have less of a lifespan, but I find that not true for rosemary. And with most spices like cumin, cardamom, any of the seeds or barks or things like that, they get reactivated with heat. So they don't really go bad. So whatever helps you store them the best is what I would do. Things can go bad and things will go bad, but just, do the best you can with what you have. One of the reasons I like to buy spices in pound bags. So like, I love going to Li Ming's. I love going to the Patel Brothers. I love going to all the Indian markets in Morrisville and Cary because, and actually I think I had something, it was like a jar like this of spice that was $9 that I got somewhere fancy. I could have got 2 pounds of that at the Indian market. And if you're looking at things like spices, which much of Indian food is like cardamom, cumin, coriander, a lot of cinnamon, those things you can get a pound because they're heat activated. Again, it's just things like basil, thyme, those are the ones. And when they're not as aromatic, you might want to get rid of them or at least double up on them. Did I answer all the questions? Let's see. With tomato powder, if you're making tomato powder, jalapeno powder, any kind of blend yourself and using a spice grinder, I do recommend keeping, and I keep all these little desiccant packs. This is like one kind of desiccant pack. I have another little thing with another kind, and I toss that in there. What happens if you don't? It just can clump up and you just have to chisel it out. It's still usable. And usually, unless it's not dry enough from the dehydrator when you grind it and put it in, it should not still get moldy. Even without a desiccant pack, it should be that dry. So that's why I said these, if you can bend it, I think it needs to be drier. When I make my own chili powder, and you can get chilies at Compare Foods or Compare Foods really inexpensively, but you know where else you can get them? Walmart. You can get guajillo and ancho chili peppers and sometimes New Mexican chilies at Walmart for under $4 and make yourself a big old thing of fresh chili powder that you've never tasted anything this good, even if you spent $15 for that bottle. And so with those things, just because of the nature of our humid environment, it just is going to make it last longer. So I think that was the detail I wanted to add. So we're going to put in a half teaspoon of onion, a half teaspoon of garlic. And if you look even at any vegan mixes that you might have, you're going to notice that those are always there. They're always kind of flavoring along, which is awesome. And a half teaspoon of ground pepper. If you're like my best friend Dawn and you don't like black pepper, you don't have to put it in. What if you hate smoky foods? Don't put it in, right? The only thing that would be an issue, if you hated oats, you probably could use something else. I just haven't tested it. You might even be able to use almond flour or sorghum flour, but I haven't tested it. So that's at your own risk. But oats, I love oats, A. B, they're great as a roux. They're very nutritional. They're minimally processed. And I know some people might be saying, could I do this with oat groats or steel cut oats instead of rolled oats? Because rolled oats are steamed and rolled over. Steel cut oats is an oat groat. Basically, it's been cut with a steel into 2 to 3 pieces. And it just needs to be finer than that. So basically, you would be making, either way, you're making oat flour. So with rolled oats, you can use a cheap blender. If you're trying to do this with oat groats, you're going to need more of a mill. And if you have a mill, that's great. If you don't, I don't. I'm waiting for someone to give me one. So when I have my mill, I'll test it for you. But I don't want to spend $500 on something I'm just going to use every once in a while. And I can use my dry, actually, I don't even use my dry pitcher for my Vitamix. You can do all of these just in the wet one. You don't need anything that fancy. You probably can do it in your oyster blender. Okay, so I'm gonna, if you have some things to say, I'm gonna blend and mute.
Okay. So I typically send a thank you email out after our monthly events that include the links and the references and resources and the different topics that get touched on in the event. So like I said, if I have your email address and you officially registered, then you will get a copy of that thank you email as well. It'll include a link to the replay, a link to the different things that she talks about. And she's mentioned a couple of times, and I want to make sure I touch on, Kathy has a great selection of classes that you can sign up for and become a cooking club class member, which is really awesome. Her dehydrator class is one of them. The dry mix one that she was talking about, I believe in the beginning, is one of them. She's got all kinds of awesome classes through Podia that you can watch live. I think she just did a salad class this week. And so we love having access to her for those kind of private classes, in addition to all of her free options between her healthy slow cooking, plant-based instant pot, her Facebook groups where she goes live all the time, and on YouTube. And so if you're looking at your recipes, some of those links are already at the top of the recipe, in addition to the lactic acid recipe. And if you sign up for her mailing list, you'll get 4 of her most popular spice blends. And that's a great resource to have as well. I love that she's showing these dry mixes so that you can have some in your pantry. So when you're ready at home for a quick weeknight meal, you can just boil some pasta, or like she did with the carrots. And so we love having access to these resources so you don't have to buy them in the store. And she is the queen of making dry spice mixes. And so like her salt substitute and things, I'll have that recipe in the thank you as well, in case you missed it on the live. And so now she's toasting her oat cheese powder. And Kathy, we did have a question on what's the best way to keep homemade ground flour from going rancid, such as the oat flour.
Oh, okay. You know, we're getting crazy now. Not only do I have the rainbow spatula, I'm just throwing stuff around. So here's a weird thing, where this drawer is, and it comes out to about this far. There's an air conditioning vent right below it. So I get lucky. Also, my pantry is also kind of enclosed where it doesn't get very hot. And that's super helpful too. If you have a problem, a lot of times it has to do with how hot your house is getting and where things are. You can store any of that in the freezer. And people say, do you store yours in the freezer? No, because my freezer is filled with stuff from classes and all this extra stuff that I'm making. I'm trying to clean it out. We have a downstairs freezer and the freezer up here. And I'm working on a bunch of whole food plant-based ice cream sweetened with dates and other unrefined stuff. So I'm trying to clear this out. But you can store that. And also I do a lot with soy curls. And it's kind of the same thing. Soy curls, anything natural can go rancid. That smells good.
And then one other question was, so basically you're saying when you were talking about your pepper, making your own pepper powder, that you can just take dried chili peppers such as, and I am going to butcher this, pasillas?
Pasilla, guajillo. I'm
And
not
just
good at
brown
it
them.
either, but I'm used to butchering them.
So-
Ancho is my favorite chili powder, and I actually even put that in my beefy bouillon. So what you want to do is you want to take them, clip the top off. I use kitchen shears, cut them down that way. So I think this is pretty good. And I'm going to just go ahead and do water in here this time, and I'll talk to you while I'm doing it, because I know there's not a lot of excitement about me whisking. But I know also it's hard to believe this turns into a sauce. I think I may have extra paprika in this one. So it's a little darker than it normally is. So my apologies. Where did I put the rest of it? Here. Huh? Cheryl says it smells like Asiago cheese. But I think there was some paprika stuck up around in the top. And I should have blended it again, because I think this is more paprika. So I apologize about that. I still would be just putting it, we still will be just putting it on pasta like this. But I also wanted to show you that this works just as well with water, because oats and water make oat milk, right? So is it as creamy as the other sauce? No. And I can put a couple of drops of milk, but that's why it's darker. So sorry that that's a bad example. And I'll just put a little bit of this. I have a little bit of ripple just so you can kind of see the difference with some of that in there.
Yes, we'll have Kathy finish explaining how she dries and grinds her
I
peppers.
totally will. I promise you. I was just shocked and appalled. But oh, here you go. So see how it's all the paprika stuck up in the tops? That's why it's more paprika in this batch. But what we can do, and what I'll do with that one to correct it, is I'll just add some more oats and some more nutritional yeast to correct the color. But also once it's with a creamy sauce, it lightened it up also with a little bit of non-dairy milk. But these are things you could take camping or something too. And I'm just going to whisk this until it gets thick again, which won't take long. Okay, so how to make chili powder. So if you're going to, a lot of times they're different shapes, but you're going to cut the stem edge off. And I use clean kitchen shears. So to me, that means you can lick them, you hide them from your family. They do not open the mail with them. They do not open the packages with them. None of that nonsense. And if you have to hide them from the rest of the world, you just do that. I will clip some herbs with them, but I figure that's still food. So you clip them and then cut down the middle so you can open them up, take out the ribs and the seeds, put it in a dehydrator. I just use the Breville, and I actually did this for holiday presents because that chili powder is magic. And you could even do a blend of them. So then they're going to be crispy, and then just blend them up in a spice grinder or your blender. The more of these you think you'll do, the more worth it is to have even an inexpensive coffee or spice grinder. I like a spice grinder the best, and you can find a lot on Amazon. So see, and it doesn't take long to thicken up. All right, so let's see, am I missing any other questions right now? Because if not, I'm going to make the fondue real quick.
I don't think so. A few folks are hopping off saying thanks so much, that they are learning a lot, and we'll make sure that they get the replay link so they get the full episode. We did get one question that, two questions. Is there a particular brand of nutritional yeast from Amazon, or do you prefer fortified or unfortified nutritional yeast?
I always get that question. Part of it's because Chef AJ prefers unfortified. And so if you're following her program, you probably want to do that. I don't know what Dr. Campbell recommends, Elizabeth. I know you'll know that if there is one.
I don't. I'll have to ask.
I'm getting ready to have a new chaff because different people have sent me their nutritional yeast. I will tell you, I have not found one that I don't like. I know some people feel like some taste different. I tend to get Frontier Herbs. It's usually inexpensive. It is fortified, I believe. And then, so is it possible to dehydrate peppers in the oven? You mean like the already dried chili peppers? Absolutely. In fact, you probably could crisp them up in a pan as well, but you just want to be careful because it has to be where they can crunch up and not be super foldable. But this is going to be super quick though, I promise you. So I'm just putting the water and the nuts that I had in here into the blender. And if you're using a Vitamix like I am right now, you can even just keep it going until it gets hot. We're not going to bother with that nonsense. If you have soaked those nuts and discarded the water, then you'd add the cup of water we used to soak this in, right? So it's super easy peasy. We're going to add a can of beans. I often, let's get a little bowl to save a little cup. And I have this guy, which just helps me drain this. Do you need one? No. Did I get it for free? Of course I did. But sometimes you can find those in the stores too. And it's kind of nice. Whoop. Except when you do that. Okay. And I'm not worried about getting every drop out because we live in an aquafaba world now. It's not like the old world where you rinsed your beans all the time. Okay. So we've got that in there. And now we're going to put in some seasonings, basically. So I'm going to put in a 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast. Actually, I can let you see from the top. That perhaps is more interesting if it gets focused. There we go. Okay, so this is 1/8 cup. And I have fancy dancy fondue sets that I use, and I pull it out and I make an affair. We actually had themed dinners for a while, and we wore 70s clothes and listened to Tom Jones and had fondue, and it was lovely. Okay, I'm going to put a tablespoon of miso. I say white miso, but you know why I'm using this one? Because this is the one that's in my fridge. And that's always the best one to use. Before I had white miso. And that's going to happen a lot in recipe developers' recipes, right? I'm going to use what I have. So there was a time I had a lot of lovage in my garden. And so that was something I did more of. We're going to put a teaspoon of lactic acid in there. And again, that's just going to help give it that cheesier flavor. And we may have to add a little extra water. I'm going to do some granulated garlic, onion, and dried mustard powder. So about 1/4 teaspoon of mustard, because this is more of a milder fondue, right? We're not looking for it to be sharp cheddar bitiness. And then the onion and the garlic is going to give it a really good seasoning. If you were going to cook this for a while after this, you could saute onion and garlic and then add this mixture in if you wanted to. Okay, and I suspect we might want to thin this out with some more water, but we can start off and see. See if this side view is better for you to see what's going on. No, I would say no, you're not going to see anything there. All right. Okay, so I'm going to taste it. I'm going to see if I didn't add any salt or pepper if I want to. I can taste that lactic acid, almost like a little lemon juice you could use, or maybe zest some of a lemon into there would also give it kind of that bite. It doesn't need very much salt because I did not use salt-free beans. And so that's something to take in consideration. So I'm probably going to end up putting about a half a teaspoon of salt. If we were going to do this properly, so, and actually I want to get this miso scraped in. You can taste a little bit of the miso. If you can't have any salt at all, they do say miso is kind of like the next best thing. I think it's Dr. Greger. But always follow your doctor's orders and don't listen to people telling you what you should do besides them. But see how this is pretty thick? It's almost hummusy. And I would like it to be ever so slightly thinner. So I'm going to put about 2 extra tablespoons of water. You could put milk in there, obviously unsweetened non-dairy milk.
Okay, perfect. So while you are blending, I can share a few questions. I have a few folks that registered for our June event already. So like I mentioned at the beginning, our Plant Pure Pod is available on a monthly basis. Usually it's the 3rd Sunday of the month. The 3rd Sunday in June is Father's Day. So we will be pushing it to the 26th of June at 5 p.m. And everyone that's here today is welcome to join us next month as well. Unfortunately, we won't be as lucky to have Kathy Hester as our demo for that month, but we would love to have you guys join us anyway. And so we did have a few questions. Kathy, like, what's your thought on using sumac as a salt substitute? And I'm probably not saying that right, S-U-M-A-C.
Sumac is awesome. That's what I will say. And I haven't used it as a salt substitute per se, but I can see how that would work. I love its lemony brightness. It's delicious.
And then a couple other questions. If you can't get blanched almonds, but you can get blanched almond flour, how would you change the ratio?
That is a very good question. So first off, I would toast the flour a little bit to get the best possible flavor because we don't know how long it's been sitting around. What do? We did 1 cup of almonds. I would start with a half a cup. So what I would do is I would toast a cup, put half a cup in the blender with everything else, and then see if it needs to be thicker. Like the way I added water, you may just not need to add water, but if it looks too thin, keep adding that in. Worst case scenario, if it doesn't pull it together at all, you could always add some more beans. So that's what I would do. You should be able to make this with oats as well. But what you should realize is as it heats up, the oats are going to thicken a lot. So if you go and look at my oat queso on Healthy Slow Cooking, you could do that without all the Mexican spices. And then, because that gets hot. So actually, and if I wanted to blend this, when I'm blending it and it's oats, so you know it goes, it changes. It starts to go down because it's harder. It's working harder as it gets thicker. So that's how you know when some of the stuff is reducing. So this isn't even hot at all. I really would have to leave this in the blender 2 to 3 solid minutes for it to heat all the way up. And when's the pizza party? I don't know, invite me to do a pizza class. That's what in the salad class though, I did make crunchy pizza chickpeas. So I'll tell you, I use nutritional yeast, tomato powder, and my pepperoni spice mixed together in equal parts, and they are good.
Well, we'll have to include that. Lori's picking on me because my dad makes homemade pizza dough by like the 2 dozens, and we said we were going to have an event where we had him make the dough on camera and gave out the recipe for everybody to do that. And so it is not officially plant pure because he uses a white bread flour, not a whole wheat flour, just because I haven't gotten him to convert and test it yet. But it is still in the works, I haven't forgotten about that, but that also means that we'll have to get Kathy Hester's pizza chickpeas to be included and have her participate as well for the toppings.
I'll do toppings, absolutely.
Yeah, because I like your dehydrated tomatoes. That's when I was saying in the dehydration class is that I dehydrate my cherry tomatoes from the garden. When you get excess cherry tomatoes, slice them in half, throw some Italian seasoning on them, dehydrate them. And they make a great kind of sun-dried tomato topping for salads or pizzas or something else. But I digress. We did have another question about the lowest temperature for this person's oven is 170 degrees. Do you think that's too high to try and dehydrate?
It's okay. Here's how I'll put it. It's not ideal. I think ideal is 135 to 140. However, I would say you could do it. What I would do is I would dehydrate them with the oven cracked, and I would do it during the day so you can be there and keep an eye on it because it might get done faster. Whereas over here in the Nesco, I think in the Excalibur, or even in my Breville, the dehydrator function, I can dehydrate that stuff for 12 hours and it's fine. It's not like it's going to just break down. And I do it actually in the oat queso, I use tapioca starch to get that kind of gooiness.
And yes, whoever's logged in as owner, I have not forgotten your question about yogurt. I was just scrolling back up to get to it. She's asking if you know how to make oat milk yogurt in your Instant Pot, which is I think a whole nother class of yours, but yes, would love to know if you know how to make oat milk yogurt in your.
In Outrageous Oatmeals, the book, I talk about making oat yogurt. So it's a little bit more delicate than some others, and this is why. So you make the oat milk. Then you have to heat it up to temperature to make sure you're not culturing bad bacteria because you've made it, right? We don't know. We just don't know. So it's just always better safe than sorry. Then you have to let it come down to a certain temperature. But also oat milk is then cooking and getting thicker. So it does make a really wonderful thick yogurt without any real additions that you might need to add like pectin or some other things. So yes, and some people complain because if you cook the oats too much, it gets kind of solid, like pudding solid. So there is a little bit of finesse and practice that has to happen.
So if you have the Outrageous cookbook, it is on page 20. I need to close my blind so I don't get a glare, but page 20 of the Outrageous cookbook is an opportunity for you to have that recipe. And then we had one other question. Thank you everyone for that sticking around. We do have a few folks that are hopping off due to weather in their area. So hopefully everybody stays safe. Tapioca starch got answered.
Oh, I see. If
Oil-free Brazilian cheese blend.
I would look it up on Google. I am almost positive there exists that recipe already. It is not my recipe, but yes, I have seen that.
Sorry, I think we're good. I think we're current. Back to the fondue.
Okay, so thanks, Kathy, for giving me this massive cheese. Now what am I supposed to do with it? So you could use some whole grain bread if you wanted to. If that's like, look, that's just going to get me into trouble, Missy. Then what I want you to do is steam baby carrots, cauliflower florets, broccoli florets, different veggies like that. And it's amazing in that. Also, you can use it or leftovers like a sauce. Again, baked potatoes, right? So baked potatoes, like little baby roasted potatoes are awesome to dip in fondue. So you can get your caftan out if you still have one and, put on some Tom Jones in honor of me. I'll have my little non-alcoholic red wine glass. And I'm going to town. But so basically, you're going to put this on anything you want a cheesy sauce. But like we have a giant fondue platter. And if you have any of that still, it can be a really fun way to kind of have a dress up dinner at home, but still like get lots of veggies in you. So even if you are going to do bread, you could do like 25% bread, 75% steamed vegetables. And you could do raw. Someone says, I saw him sing in person. I am so jealous because when we did this party on HBO, he did a special show and I taped it so we could have that special show playing. Like Cheryl always laughs. She's like, if I hear Tom Jones when I'm coming up the stairs, I know something crazy is going on for dinner. So, but yeah, he is good. He's awesome. Any other questions for me?
I think that covers most of them. When can you come back for another one? We'll have to set up another time for you to be able to come back and do another one of these. We are the location that you came to. So the last time we had Kathy Hester with us officially was in, I think, June of 2019, maybe. It feels like forever ago.
In the before times.
In the before times. And the location that she came to is where we do our monthly meetups. And we are in the process of revamping that space a little. The road got paved. We're going to have the outside painted, which is another reason why we weren't in person today. It's because I wasn't sure if the road would be all torn up. It just got finished paving on a Thursday maybe of this week. And so we will have you back eventually for an in-person or definitely another live event. And so you've made 3 DIYs and dinner and appetizers and all kinds of fun stuff with the different DIY mixes today.
Right. And the thing is I could have made this fondue in 2 mixes probably in 15 minutes. And that's what I want you to see. But doing the dry mixes ahead of time just gives you time for when you don't want to do anything. And this literally, you just dump some stuff in the blender and then heat it up and it's magic.
Awesome. Awesome. So fantastic presentation. Thanks so much. Thank you. God bless. Thanks so much. Loved it. Learned a lot. Wonderful. Thank you. So we can't thank you enough for joining us today. Fantastic presentation. Thank you. So everyone has learned quite a bit. I always learn something from watching. That's why I'm a member of your cooking class club, so that I can get inside access to those awesome classes that you do twice a month for your exclusive community there. Enjoyed the recipes and the information. Thank you to all of my pod members that joined us today, to all of Christabel Spa and Wellness members that joined, to all of the Kathy Hester followers that packed the house today. Thank you. Thank you. We really do love having the opportunity to have guest speakers with us for our Plant Pure events each month. And so if you guys know of anybody else that you want to have as a guest speaker for our events, let us know and we'll reach out, see if we can get them to do another event with us. Fantastic. Love the class. Can't wait to get the oat book. Yes. And so MJ, I wish you lived closer and you could borrow it from our library. I'll make sure that I get you a link for the oat book for the few elusive copies that are left available for people to get.
If you get it at Virtual Veg Fest, I can sign it. Actually, Cheryl mails them.
Oh, sweet.
We don't have a lot left, but we have a few left because it's actually out of print. So I think we have the last few.
I'll make sure to include that in the thank you link that I send out to everyone. So you may get them sold out here before long with everybody wanting your Outrageous book. And so we appreciate that. And it supports the Veg Fest community here locally for the Triangle Veg Fest in Helene, who is a wonderful community advocate for all things good. She's got a mac and cheese event. Hopefully I'll see you at that in August, Kathy. So many wonderful things coming up and opportunities. And if nothing else, you can meet us monthly on our Plant Pure Pod potlucks that are virtual right now. Tongue twister there. Yes, all of you non-North Carolinians, that is the beauty of love. I love that we have gone virtual for these events.
You no longer have to be in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, or driving distance to our Chapel Hill Plant Pure Pod. And so feel free to join our plant-based Chapel Hill Pod on Facebook for upcoming events and information, and also any of our future events, and to catch all of our past replays that are in the pod Facebook group as well. And so we love that we have been able to broaden our borders and have folks all across the globe now, thanks to Kathy. We had them all across the country, and now we are definitely in other countries as well because of this. And so we appreciate that. And all of you that are in different time zones, I can't thank you guys enough for joining us today and for sticking around as long as we've had this event. I told Kathy we usually go for about an hour, but she could talk as long as she wants. And so we love having the opportunity but to see everything from start to finish. That was one thing I wanted to make sure we showed, is not just the dry recipes and how to do that, but then how to actually put it into a meal, how to use it with something. So I love the idea of putting it over your spiralized carrots and throwing some of your greens, your Swiss chard in it. That was beautiful from yesterday's unboxing. Go check out Kathy Hester on healthyslowcooking.com and on plantbasedinstantpot.com. Vegan cooking with Kathy Hester. I think you've got several, your healthyslowcooking.com Facebook group, plant-based instant pot Facebook group. So Kathy, you can share all the ways to connect.
And if you just have a single quick question, you can email me too at kathyhester@gmail.com. Put a note up. If I don't answer you, it's because sometimes I get a real influx of like crazy mail. So it doesn't mean I don't want to talk to you. It means I lost it. So just know that ahead of time. I'm happy to help. And I feel just so lucky that we have Elizabeth and Deanna doing this plant pod and opening it up to everyone. And I'm always telling my people from all over the place to come, because you guys put so much great information in your Facebook group. And I feel like you just are so dedicated to the cause and do a lot of good. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm learning from some of the best like you on what to do and how to support our community. And so we definitely do appreciate that feedback, and for you continuing to share. I know whenever I hop onto your lives, you're always giving us a shout out. So thank you. We do the same. You see in our Facebook group, we're always shouting out Kathy and her recipes and the things that we can share. And some of her groups are private. You can't share from them. So I copy and paste into our pod group so you can get access to them and then join her groups later so that you can find them immediate and not have to wait for us to replay them. And so we really do just appreciate everyone that is trying to eat more plants. Our pod is not, you are not required to be plant-based already. We just try to keep it to a plant-based conversation. And so all of our guest speakers and recipes are usually plant-based, part of the Plant Pure Nation pod network. And so you have joined a community of hundreds of thousands of people all across the globe in 23 countries or more that meet for pod meetups. And so if you don't have a pod meetup around you, feel free to start your own. And you should have gotten an email. So if you have any questions, we can share how you can do that to get connected to a pod in your local community as well. Or if you're interested in being a group leader like my sister and I could not do these events without my for real deal sister, Deanna Smith, who was, I believe, cooking along with you in the background. I'm going to allow everyone to unmute and just say, oh, yay, she's got her jars, Deanna. So you can unmute yourselves if you would like to say thank you and tell us where you're signing off from. We appreciate everyone that's been here today.
Yes, I was having fun going along with Kathy as she was describing everything. And so I was like, oh yeah, okay, all right. And then running back and forth and back and forth. But that's what I was doing. I got the oat cheese powder and the creamy pasta sauce mix were two things that I got accomplished while I was listening and watching at the same time. So thank you, Kathy, because this week's meals are going to be extra special.
That's awesome. And don't forget, you can add stuff. You can make the cheesy sauce like Mexican inspired and all that too as you do a new batch. Your kids are going to be thrilled.
I will be. I'm looking forward to it.
Our kids eat well, and I love getting the opportunity to stop by and getting some of her fancy fresh. So if there's any leftovers, feel free to let me know the right time and place to pick them up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Will do.
All right, everyone.
So we definitely appreciate it.
Yes, we do. We do. We definitely appreciate it. And we love everything. And like I said, if you are local to the Chapel Hill area and would like to have a cookbook loaner, a book drop, we meet locally folks that can borrow from our own cookbook as a lending library. And then we meet back up to get it back. And so that's been a great resource for some folks that like to check out a cookbook before buying it. And so we have several of Kathy Hester's in our collection and available for you to check out as well. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Kathy, for participating and offering such an awesome demo today. And for Cheryl in the background, I know you're there, even though we don't get to see you on camera all the time. We do appreciate all of the support it takes to do events like this. Yeah.
Definitely.
And again, to Jean and Margaret and MJ and all of our pod members that joined us, thank you. We will see you next month. And any of you new members. Oh, Jean has a question. Yep. Hold on, Jean. Let's see if we can get you unmuted. Did you have a question? Or are you just saying bye?
Jean, oh, there you go.
Oh, I can't hear you, Jean. Message me. I'll touch base. We always have audio trouble with you if you didn't dial into the telephone option to make sure your microphone works. If you have a question, I'll reach out to you. And if it's something I can't answer, I will certainly get Kathy on board to answer it for us. Thank you for being here. Just so to give Jean a shout out, Jean is, along with my dad, Jean and my dad are in their 90s and are part of our pod members. And so we love having all ages in our group. And that just goes to show that it doesn't matter how old you are, you can still eat healthy and enjoy it at the same time. Thanks again, everybody. Take care. Peace, love, and hugs.